Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of House to Home. This is a podcast brought to you by Family Policy Alliance Foundation. As always, my name is Grace Youngson. I'm alongside my co-host Joseph Kohm, and we're really excited because this, to me, is a really, really special episode. We are going to be recapping God's faithfulness, what he has done through our organization, which is actually three orgs: Family Policy Alliance Foundation, Family Policy Alliance, and Christians Engaged. Over this past year, we have seen so many amazing things: major Supreme Court victories, wins in state legislatures, historic moments at SoCon, which is our annual conference, and really just seeing our movement of believers rising across the nation. This really was a year of breakthroughs, and we're so excited to be able to talk about that and really invite you to celebrate with us. For all of our supporters, this year would not have been possible without you. So we're so grateful. Joseph, why don't you start telling us what this year has been like for FPA?
I would love to, Grace. That was a great introduction, and you're so right. This has been just an enormous year of God showing his faithfulness to us and really through our supporters, and we want this show to honor that. So you teed that up so nicely. I'm just going to go through some of our statistics and accomplishments from this year, and then you're going to follow up with some more of that. But as you mentioned, this is three organizations and their victories in one that we're going to cover. This is FPA, Family Policy Alliance Foundation, which this podcast is a product of, and our sister ministry, Christians Engaged. We work with our nearly 40 allied state organizations, which listeners have heard us talk about on this show before, our State Family Policy Council Network, or FPCs. If you're listening, chances are there's one in your state. We work with nearly 40 of those across the country, which comprises more than 375 staff members, 55,000 church relationships, and that forms one of the most powerful state-based pro-family alliances in America. Really, I mean, if we're being honest, it's the most powerful force for the family in their states through churches and through state legislators. And so that led to some amazing policy wins, landmark wins really this year. In 2025, those included, we got to 25 Help Not Harm states. Our Help Not Harm campaign is what protects kids from gender ideology, especially gender transition procedures. So that's puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and then actual surgeries attempting to transition children to the opposite sex. We reached 25 states that have passed a version of our Help Not Harm model law that we wrote so many years ago. And at the same time this year, after we got to 25 states that have passed those, fully half the states, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of these laws in a case called United States versus Scrimeti. This was over the Tennessee and Kentucky versions of these laws, and the Supreme Court gave a ringing constitutional endorsement of those 25 state laws, the Help Not Harm campaign, and has just reaffirmed to FPA our vision, we think, that's been given to us by God, that one day every single state will have a Help Not Harm law. That's just one of the things God did for us this year. Obviously, that's enormous, but that's just one of the things. Here are some others. We reached 27 states that have protected girls' sports just for girls. That's our Save Girls Sports campaign that we started all the way back in 2021. We're now at 27 states that have ensured girls' sports and opportunities are for girls, which is huge. 22 states have also required are now requiring age verification measures for pornography. This is an initiative FPA took on as part of our parental rights campaign because we simply believe that parents have the right to direct the upbringing of their children. We think that's biblical and it's part of the U.S. Constitution. And we think that part of that right to direct your kids' upbringing includes the right to decide when and how they learn about what sex is. But because of the internet and its unregulated nature, kids are learning about sex from pornography, and their parents have no idea. So these laws are necessary to protect kids from that exposure to pornography, and thereby reaffirm parents' rights and restore rights to parents to direct their kids' upbringing in regards to sex. So we started that work last year, and now we're at 22 states that have passed a version of that law. Continuing with the trend at the Supreme Court, though, that was our second major Supreme Court victory this year. Also in June, in the case called Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton over the Texas law in this that does this, the Supreme Court gave a ringing endorsement to these laws as well and to this aspect of our Let Parents Parent campaign. So all in all, it was just an incredible year for legislative progress and for affirmation from the Supreme Court, because almost everything FPA, every policy FPA works to get passed is unfortunately controversial and therefore likely to get litigated in court. So anytime we have a case up before the court over one of our laws, it's a tense time. But God delivered to us two ringing victories from the Supreme Court, and we're just thankful to him for that. So, Grace, why don't you tell us about some of our other landmark victories from this year and successes that God's given us?
Absolutely. And before I do, I just want to emphasize that, these victories, they really are God given. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
you know that you are on the right side of history. And this is perhaps a funny parallel to draw because I'm British, but I actually watched the movie Patriot the other day, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually quite like action movies. And
You're becoming more American by the day, Grace.
I know, right? It was really funny because I'm like, the British are the bad guys in this movie. And the thing that I also think about that conflict, which I know I'm British and I love my British fellow countrymen and women, but God gave America victories in that battle that were miraculous because there were certain scenarios where they should not have won based on technological, physical, those kinds of things, numbers of fighters. And when something is like so clearly defined that it is literally an act of God helping you win, that's when you know you're on the right side. I also think about World War II, and there were so many British battles with the Nazis that were completely like miraculous that the Brits won. And so, it's really, really amazing and encouraging. And for everyone who supports us, your money is going into God's work. And you are enabling us to continue that vision to see this nation be one in which religious freedom flourishes, God is honored, families thrive, and life is cherished. That is the vision here at FPA. And so we're just so excited to get to share with you everything that's been happening this year. We
If
saw
I could go even further, Grace, I would just
Go
encourage
for
our
it.
supporters. You are the instrument God has chosen to make these victories possible. Like,
Yes.
it's your support, whether it's listening to this podcast or taking one of our courses or following us on social media or giving to us financially. You are the instrument by which God is enabling these victories. And it reminds me of something my pastor always says, which is, on the other side of your obedience lies somebody else's salvation. And that's true in the work FPA does and all ministries do. So this episode is a big thank you. And we hope you'll really take that away
Yes.
from the rest of the show. So, but Grace, by all means, continue to tell us about some of the highlights from this last year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Joseph. God honors our obedience, and it's really, really important. So, we saw historic momentum at our social conservative conference this year. We brought together nearly 400 leaders, over 150 organizations, and lawmakers from across the nation. It was powerful. It was the first ever social conservative conference of ours that I had attended, and there was just such like an electric energy when you're around people who are working
Mhm.
on the front lines, and you're able to encourage, inspire, educate, bring together to strategize. It was such a special time. We also saw major training expansions in our academy. Statesman Academy, we're now at 283 alumni from 42 states. School Board Academy, we have 250 school board members trained. We actually just did a live cohort, which I was privileged to produce that, and it was so cool just seeing the learning that was happening. And then our Christians Engaged Academy, we have over 2,700 students trained through that. And what's so special about that is with Christians Engaged, we have the Get Out the Vote initiative. So we're able to send voting reminders. We have about 1 million Christians in our database now who we're sending voting reminders to. We are the only org that does this kind of thing. And we don't just send national reminders, we send reminders for local elections as well. Because as we've talked about before on this podcast, where at the local level is really where change happens, and it drifts up to the federal level. So we have the get out the vote system, but then we have our academy. So it's not just about reminding people to vote, but it's about taking it one step further and educating them in biblical citizenship. And that is truly exciting. And then we also launched America Reads the Bible, which is an event for 2026. It is going to be huge. We have over 100 national ministries partnering with us. It's set to be the largest Bible reading event in American history. It is next April 18 through 25. We will put the link in this video description to the website. You can sign up. You can join us there in person. We have nationally recognized leaders who will be reading sections of the Bible. And it's just going to be such a special time as we really call this nation back to the heart of God. And then, this movement has been rising even despite the persecution. We've seen the powerful moment from the movement with Jason McGuire and his unjust targeting by New York's Attorney General. And so even in the midst of challenges, we are growing and rising, and it's just so exciting to see. So
we have a saying at FPA, Grace, as you know, but I want our audience to know that you take the most flack when you're over the target. And boy, New York is what we might call a target-rich environment for our work. It needs a lot of Jesus, and I say that as a New Yorker. Yeah. That's in an odd way. What happened to Jason is affirming for our audience. For those listening, if you haven't heard, Jason McGuire is the executive director of New York Families, which is the New York State FPC that we affiliate with there, and he was very unjustly persecuted and targeted by Attorney General Letitia James in New York simply for standing for faith and for family as a part of the FPC network. And you can read all about his story on our website. If you Google him, his great documentary about his experience comes up. And unfortunately, he was the one this year where God chose to demonstrate that this movement is making a difference for the kingdom, which never comes without adversity. But anything in life worth doing always has adversity, particularly things for the kingdom. So that's why, Grace, when I was reading all this, you and I, we get up and go to work at FPA every day and are so blessed to get to do that. And I think, yes, we work very hard to remain thankful for what God has done. But even just reading over this, which, by the way, we've taken from our impact report. We'll talk about that document before the end of the show. I love when the impact report comes out every year because it's the collection of all these victories that God has given to FPA every year. And it gives me, even who I've, Grace, we've lived through all of them. It gives me this renewed sense of just how good God has been to us, and fixes my perspective. And during the days when I'm tempted to think I'm not making much of a difference, that was my reaction when doing preparation for this show, based on the impact report and reading on all this. This is just it fixes my perspective. It shows that what God's doing through our supporters, empowering FPA, is powerful and worth doing and rewarding and critical. It's saving lives. I just appreciated that this time around. I want to know how you felt when you were reading through all of this, Grace, to get ready for our show.
Absolutely. Well, the Bible talks so much about giving thanks to the Lord. And really, as we've said, this episode is about giving thanks to the Lord. And something that I have noticed in my life is, when moments get a little harder, it is so important that you go back and remember how God has been faithful, how God has come through. And right now, that's what we're doing. We are giving thanks. We're remembering him. We will not be slothful in forgetting those things that he's done. I think the other thing that struck me was just how many different areas we're fighting on. Our organization is not the biggest organization, and yet we are privileged to get to work in so many different areas, to be protecting and fighting for so many good things. And that's what's so special, because we have this alliance. We're able to fight nationally, we're able to fight locally, and we're able to fight on lots of different things that are so close to God's heart, and also that all intertwine as well to some respect. And so, my first reaction is one of joy and one of just happiness and thankfulness. This is good news. And so, yeah, just gratefulness. I think that there comes almost a soberness as well of just being so grateful to God for entrusting us with this mission. And for all of you who support, as Joseph mentioned earlier, you know, God honors our obedience, and as he entrusts us with things, as he places on your heart to donate, to support, whatever that looks like, um, in a sense, it is also sobering that we as imperfect humans are trusted with such a divine mission. And so it's very exciting. That would be my first reaction. Kind of long.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I think that's appropriate too, Grace. And I just want our supporters to know if this is what the kind of thing you care about, everything we've read out, this is why we call ourselves social conservatives, because we're conserving something. We're trying to conserve the legacy of God's blessings on our nation and on the Western world that we have inherited. I mean, there are a lot of victories that we haven't mentioned here and don't have time to cover. A lot of them are even overseas. God has entrusted us to steward his truth and the legacy of faith that we've inherited as Americans, as people who live in the Western world. And that's what your support for us goes to. And I hope that people see that as we talk about this, which might be a good time. We'll mention this again at the end, but we should probably say what the impact report is here at this point in the show. So all of our preparation is based on this annual document that FPA sends out to our supporters called our 2025 impact report. And it talks about just this, all these victories that we've had, but in much more depth, with beautiful graphics and pictures from these events throughout the year. There's a couple of each of us in there, Grace. We made it in this year. But I love when we get it, 'cause it's a beautifully produced product. And does such a great job of telling the story of FPA and of God's grace to us and to our nation through FPA every year. And so we got an advanced copy to prepare for this show. But if you're listening right now, hopefully you will have received the impact report in the mail. If you haven't, you will in a few days. And if you'd like to get a copy of the impact report, we will put a link to where you can download a digital version of it in the notes for this show. We would encourage you to do that. Please dive in and hear more about what Grace and I are talking about. Don't just take our word for it, and see some of the great visuals we have in there, some of our statistics and some longer write-ups about these victories. And really what we're trying to do through it is testify. It is a testimony to God's goodness, God's rewarding of your obedience and supporting us. And we'll remind you of that again before the end of the show. But Grace, you've worked with me on some of these victories. So which ones stand out to you? I guess we've talked about a lot of our policy victories. I mean, I've been working on some of those for years, leading up to some of our victories for today. You've done a lot with our preparation for some of our events and our media. Any particular memories or testimonies stand out to you from some of these victories we've mentioned?
That's a great question. I think that I think one section that we work on that's fairly close to my heart is protecting kids online. And so seeing the expansion of that, we also, which we did do a podcast on this, but we added our first senior fellow to our team this year, Melissa McKay, who is really a leader and an expert in this area. That is very exciting to me. And I think that it is also testament of our ability to be forward thinking, of our ability to be relevant. Sometimes conservatives get pegged as being too traditionalist and not as up with the times. But that initiative really, really makes us very relevant. And actually very future thinking, because a lot of parents and a lot of people have no idea what kids are exposed to online. So seeing the expansion of that initiative this year has been really, really exciting to me. And I would also just mention again, SoConCon was just awesome. And I've also been privileged to produce a number of our policy calls this year, which have been really exciting to see as well, as there's been strategy for next year. And just seeing the camaraderie among our movement, I think that is a testament for the future strength going forward. the enemy's favorite thing to do is to cause division, because two who are divided can't stand, as the Bible says. But we are united, which means that we are so much stronger moving forward in these things. And being united with God and under God is obviously most important. So I would say that's what excites me.
Yeah, that's great, Grace, because I appreciate that you would produce those private strategy calls for our policy that you mentioned, and so you got kind of an inside view on how this is done with our state groups, how these successes are achieved, that I've been working on for years, and frankly, kind of take for granted. So to hear your positive reflections on it is great, and that's a lot of what people's support enables is that private strategizing and planning that ends up in these great victories. I was glad you got exposed to that in it's still relatively an early time for you with us at FPA, but just reflecting on this the Supreme Court victories again, people are probably tired of hearing me talking about those, especially when you and I covered each one on an episode of this program earlier in the year. But just the help not harm one particularly because we've been planning for it for 8 years. Way back before either of us were on this team, Grace, when the early drafts of the model help not harm bill were written, they were written with the express vision, however far down the road, that they would undergo Supreme Court scrutiny. They started with the end in mind, as we are going to write a model policy to solve this problem that nobody has the courage to address with policy, and we're going to do it with a vision that this will be given a ringing endorsement someday from the Supreme Court. That's a vision that came to fruition. We wore the restraints of that vision, and we saw it come to fruition this year, and that's what was so satisfying to me, and should be so encouraging and inspiring for the future for people that are listening, because I do think there's a forward-looking dimension to this that we would be wise to just note for our audiences. The Bible says you need to reflect on the past and have a vision for the future. This is the vision. If you like what you've heard, if you appreciate what FPA is doing and you think we're in the right, then these kind of victories, this is our vision for the future. Grace, you mentioned Melissa McKay earlier, and it's amazing that she's on our team. We're going to stand on the shoulders of the Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton decision that authorized states to protect kids online and use that as a springboard to pass even broader restorations of parental rights on the internet going forward with the help of experts and heroes like Melissa, so that we can go on to greater and greater things, from glory to glory, as the scripture says. If you like that vision, then we just invite you to sow into it with us in the different ways you can support us, not just financially, but in following us on social media, listening to this podcast, going through one of our courses like the School Board Academy that you mentioned earlier, Grace. If you like this vision, I would just invite you to do what the Bible says, sow into the vision, submit to the restraints that vision brings, because it clearly works. Visions that are from God, he always brings to fruition and gives favor to. So that's what this is also, is it is reflecting, thankfully, on what God's done in the past, but it's also forecasting visions for more and more and bigger victories in the future that we would invite you to be a part of and help us achieve.
100%. I totally agree. Teaming up with where the favor of God is always a smart decision. And that is what this report is really showing. Another thing that was exciting was just seeing the Save Girls Sports campaign continuing to grow this year, continuing to shape national policy. We now have 27 states that protect female athletes and ensure that girls' sports are for girls only. We also saw that victory with the International Olympic Committee this year, which was really exciting. We did a podcast on that. You can check it out. And I'm sure, that matters to me as a woman as well. So it's exciting seeing wins on all of these fronts, and just seeing people waking up. I think this year, with different dramatic events that have happened as well, has been one where it has woken a lot of people up. And that's very exciting to see that people are coming to that decision point of the truth, because now good and evil are becoming even more recognizable. And so it's very exciting to see God's people starting to rise up even more. You know, the Bible says that as the darkness increases, the light gets brighter. And that's exactly what we plan to keep doing at FPA, is keep getting brighter, keep serving and working harder and harder. And we're growing as an org too. We've added to our staff this year. We have grown in capabilities of what we can do. And the merger has proven such a big success this year as well, as we've really gotten into that. And so just so much to be grateful for. Joseph, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what stuck out to you? Or we could even go to a break.
Yeah, why don't we go to a break and then we'll come back and talk about some of the adversity we face. We'll be back in just a minute with more House to Home.
Imagine your child, confused, isolated, hurting. And instead of help, she's offered hormones. Instead of love, he's handed a scalpel. This is not care. This is not compassion. This is experimentation. Right now in America, children struggling with their identity are being pushed down a one-way path. Puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, irreversible surgeries. These procedures cause sterility, loss of sexual function, permanent voice changes, heart issues, and scars that don't just stay on the body. In many states, these drastic medical interventions can happen without parental consent, or even knowledge. Once it's done, there's no going back. But hope is rising. Across the nation, people are saying, enough. Help Not Harm laws have passed in 25 states, protecting children from irreversible harm and ensuring they receive true, compassionate care. Real help means real counseling, real support, real healing. 80 to 95% of children struggling with their identity will reconcile with their biological sex if left unmedicated and unharmed. This movement is growing, and with your support, we can protect every child in America from dangerous ideology and irreversible procedures. We're fighting in every state. We're working with Congress, and now with federal momentum on our side, it's time to take this to the next level. Your gift can stop a child from being harmed. Your support fuels the laws, the lawsuits, the lobbying, and the healing. Give today, give generously, because kids need help, not harm.
Welcome back to House to Home. And Grace, I really appreciate what you said before the break about how when things get darker, the light gets brighter, because there's a quote we've included from our CEO in the 2025 impact report that we've based this episode on, where Craig says, our response, FPA's response to darkness, has not been retreat, but revival. And revival is what we're seeing from top to bottom in the government political policy world. And we want this episode to be a testimony to that. And that's why, before we went to the break, Grace, you mentioned the IOC's announcement of their forthcoming policy to save girls' sports at the Olympic level, and what a huge victory that was. We did an episode of this program on that. And that's one of the last victories we wanted to mention this year, not just that policy from the IOC, but that is one of the several markers we got in 2025 of just the heights of FPA's influence. So you got this new policy from the IOC that would never have happened if we hadn't achieved 27 states protecting girls' sports. I mean, it's just enormous. But you wouldn't get that unless the IOC felt that weight, particularly as they get ready to come back to America and Los Angeles for the 2028 Summer Olympics. But as another measure of FPA's influence, aside from that, that was international. Talk about here in the U.S., President Trump passed multiple executive orders, I should say signed multiple executive orders that not only addressed these issues and wouldn't be possible without FPA's and our network's success in them, but adopted our specific solutions to them. So he signed an executive order attempting to protect girls' sports by defunding any organization or university that doesn't protect girls' sports. But he also signed a help not harm executive order. And not only is just the fact that he signed an order on that subject a mark of FPA's influence, but the fact that he adopted our exact solution to that problem, which is a financial one. We wrote FPA to turn the financial incentive to transition kids on its head by making it too expensive for healthcare entities to transition kids. President Trump and his team took the exact same approach in their executive order on this to pull all federal funding from hospital and medical entities that perform these barbarities on children. And that's just a testimony to God giving FPA favor at the highest levels of government and of world governing bodies. So I think that's just worth mentioning if we're going to talk about the goodness God has given to us in 2025.
I totally agree. And another thing, talking about defunding things, you know, we saw the defunding of Planned Parenthood happen this year too, which was awesome. That is something that has been fought for a very long time. And so there are so many good things. I feel like the more we talk, the more that it's like, oh yeah, and this happened. And so
people need to get the impact report to hear all of it.
Yes, exactly. This is just a teaser. So yes, that. And then also, you know, I was thinking back to what I said earlier about us seeing this year has also been a time where people have just been waking up. And I think specifically one event in particular was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was an ally of ours. I think that woke people up. I know that even for us, it was a wake up call because you just realize the seriousness of the evil that exists, and two, the finite amount of time that we have. And I think seeing how someone like Charlie Kirk spent his life, dedicated himself to making the best difference that he believed how to make is very sobering, inspiring, and really issues a direct call to every single one of us. And, you know, I'm not a huge person for New Year's resolutions because oftentimes those can kind of not happen. But something that I do usually do, and my birthday just passed, is usually on my birthday, I start to think about, okay, what do I want this next year of my life to look like? Or more importantly, God, what should the next year of my life look like? And I think it's important that we take time to think about our lives, to think about where we're going, to think about what we're doing, not to just get caught up sailing through life. And I think that certain events this year have really given people a wake-up call, which is very encouraging because now we're seeing revival, we're seeing action, we're seeing so many people stepping up and doing what God is asking them to do. And I would even issue a call to you as our audience. Ask the Lord what he has for 2026 for you, what he has for you in terms of getting involved, and then how you can connect with us to get support. Maybe God is laying on your heart to run for school board. Take our school board academy. Maybe he's laying on your heart to run for a position as a statesman or stateswoman. We have Statesman Academy. Please connect with us. Check out our resources. We are here for you, and we're here to ultimately help you in God's calling on your life.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Grace. I want our audience to know, yeah, clearly God's favor is on this movement. There is room here for you. If you want to be involved, there's a place for you. So we would just encourage you, pray about the level of support you want to have sown into this movement that God is blessing and moving forward. And it's true, Grace, it doesn't happen without opposition. This year showed us a lot of that, whether it was the persecution of Jason McGuire, the assassination of our dear friend Charlie Kirk, and people want to hear our reflections on that. We did do an episode of this program reflecting on his life and legacy. But that's part of being a Christian. We wake up every day and face danger, whether we feel it or not. So if you're going to face that, it might as well be for the kingdom, and Christians can have that satisfaction. So we just want people to know there's never no cost to doing God's work, but there is always a place for you there. God has a great plan and a purpose for your life, and we at FBA would just be honored if you would pray about whether we might be a part of that, because we would love to have you join us as we go from victory to victory. So, hopefully you've enjoyed hearing about some of those in this episode today. If you want to hear about more and go into depth, we would just welcome you to download a copy of our 2025 Impact Report. There will be a link to do that in the notes for this show or in the description on YouTube. If you haven't received yours in the mail yet, hopefully you will in a few days, but don't rely on that. Please go download a copy below. We'd just love to share with you more in depth of what God has accomplished. And we'd like to share with you through that impact report our vision for 2026 and all God's going to do. For example, we mentioned the Save Girls sports laws in 27 states. That case will be argued before the Supreme Court in January, and FPA will be there. So we are going to go further up and further in for all of this, and we'd love to have you with us. So thank you for joining us for this episode of House to Home. We'll have at least one more show before the end of the year, but we will definitely be back here in 2026, Grace and I, to keep you updated on all things policy and law that can affect your families. Thank you for joining us and empowering us for a great 2025. We will see you again soon. See you next time on House to Home.